You are, you should be, oh, did I not make you one?
No, thank you, yes.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And there, so the student. Very live right now.
Here comes Representative.
Good morning, House Labor Health Social Services. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, and the temperature is 1 degree outside. With that, Marilyn, if you'd call the roll.
Good morning. Representative Chadwick. Representative Clouston. Representative Hornock.
Here.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Penn.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Representative Trujillo.
Here.
Representative Ward.
Here.
Representative Yin.
Here.
Chairman Swanitzer.
Here.
Thank you.
So committee today, we have one bill before us, Senate File 147, Government Contracts Labor Organization, brought to us from Senator Anderson. Welcome to Senate Revenue, or Senate, what am I? I'm Senate Labor Health today. I'm House Labor. I'm going to keep drinking my coffee. It's been a long morning. Welcome to House Labor Health. Feel free to come forward and present Senate File 147. The joy of being on too many committees lately. Welcome, Senator Anderson, if you would present Senate File 147.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing our bill. Senate 147 is a simple little bill. Everybody says that. You have to say that, even if it isn't. But what it does, it codifies and protects how public construction work is contracted in the state. A fair and open bidding process inclusive of all contractors, regardless of labor affiliation. It simply states that state and local public entities, when procuring services for public construction, can neither require nor prohibit the use of a project labor agreement as a condition for bidding and winning these contracts. I've got a letter that the governor sent, 18 governors, in fact, sent to the Office of Government-Wide Acquisition Policy in DC. And I want to read you the first paragraph. We, the undersigned governor, submit comment expressing our opposition to the PLA mandates proposed by the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Council. In April of this year, 18 governors wrote a letter to President Biden expressing opposition to PLA mandates. And with this letter, we formally submit our concerns to the rulemaking process. And that was signed by our governor and 18 other governors. The use of project labor agreements is only increasing across the country, encouraged by the federal government, including in the Rocky Mountain West. The federal government continues to impose or encourage PLAs wherever possible. It is wise for our state to prevent any discussion of using PLAs on Wyoming projects by passing this simple piece of legislation. This bill officially makes it state policy that we will protect fair and open competition in public construction, protect our construction workers, and protect our taxpayers. We had one amendment in the Senate, and I want to tell you what it did. The airports were having a problem with it because they get federal grants. And with a federal grant, you have to abide by the federal rules. So we stuck in on page 2, line 8 after B, subject to 16.6.108, which says that if it's a federal grant, you have to follow the federal grant rules. So that took care of the airports issue. Most of the assistance we get from the feds is usually a 90-10 match. So that is not a federal grant kind of situation. So this law would say we have to allow all bidders. So that's all the bill does is say allow all bidders, whether they're affiliated or not. With that, I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Representative Ward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So to be clear, this bill would neither require nor prohibit companies that have labor agreements. Therefore, it puts union and non-union shops on an equal footing. Correct?
Correct.
Senator Anderson?
Thank you.
Correct. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I don't know if you're the right person. Could you talk to me a little bit more what a PLA is? It's a recent advent and the federal government's pushing it, and I'm sure there are other people, but I thought I'd check with you.
I think there's probably people in the audience that'll be able to tell you better, Mr. Chairman, but I will tell you, it's a planned labor agreement. And it's been around for quite a while. It's not anything new. I've been discussing this for at least 5 years. And where they use it, a lot of times it is a good option to use it. They can tell you there's instances where they've actually got more people working and save the company money. It's rare, but it does happen. So that's been used all over the US. It's just that the recent administration has pushed it harder than other administrations have.
Other questions? Representative Yin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senator Anderson, I guess you just said that there are benefits sometimes. What would hinder us? Why would we want to hinder ourselves from situations where it could achieve policy goals that we want as a state, like
Mr. Chairman.
providing more jobs, et cetera?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Anderson.
that's exactly right. Where the unions have a lot of help and can produce the bodies to do the job, like in concentrated areas, they can produce more labor than they can. Here, we're labor short, and we gotta take every bid we can with anybody that can produce the labor to do the job. So it's a difficult thing here to produce enough labor to do the job you're trying to bid on. That's a big hindrance here.
Follow up, Representative Yin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senator Anderson, I guess if there was a situation where it made sense, why would we still want to strap the hands of our executive from being able to do it, or other governmental entities? I guess I'm just confused on why the bill is necessary. If there are situations where it doesn't make sense, wouldn't our governmental entities just not require it?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
yes,
Senator
there are situations. We're not precluding any of those situations. We're saying bid the job, whether you're a union shop or a non-union shop. Everybody bids the job. That's what this bill says. Nobody can be excluded. And with a PLA, that excludes the non-union shop. Now, you'll hear that it doesn't, but the non-union shop doesn't have any of the PLA requirements.
Okay. Other questions? Welcome, Representative Clouston. All right, don't go too far, Senator Anderson, and if you're able to stay, please stay with us, and we'll
Thank you.
call you up at the end. With that,
Thank you.
Representative Heiner, you're here. Any thoughts or questions on the bill? Any agencies in the room? I'm not seeing any. Mr. McNiven, come on down. You looked ready to jump up, so get a place to start as any. Welcome, Travis. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Travis McNiven here on behalf of the Association Builders and Contractors. The Senate File 147 before you today is, as Senator Anderson said, is a pretty straightforward bill. The bill preserves fair and open competition for state-funded projects, disallowing the state from requiring, and that's an important word, requiring PLAs and other agreements as part of the bid request. It does not prohibit contractors, of course, from voluntarily entering into PLAs. 24 other states around the country already have this policy in place. The Biden administration's executive order that was alluded to earlier has been issued. It is in rulemaking. An important thing is it does not apply to this conversation. That executive order only applies to fully federally funded projects over 35 million that Wyoming doesn't govern whatsoever and are run by federal agencies with only federal dollars. Any federal grant programs, projects that include both state and federal money, ARPA or other similar programs are untouched by the executive order by law and the Constitution. Any project or federal assistance that comes to the state That includes even $1 of state money or money that is granted to the state like ARPA to be controlled by the state and governed by the state laws and state regulations. This law does not preclude the state from receiving federal dollars either legally or in practice. It does not discourage federal funding coming to the state and does not disallow the state from receiving funds. That is why 23 other states have successfully implemented this and are winning bids and with federal funding currently. Again, this bill lays out that government can neither require nor prohibit the use of a project labor agreement as a condition for bidding and winning a government contract. Mr. Chairman, there are Mr. Brandon Ray with the Associated Builders and Contractors. I believe he is also online. And when the time comes and you know, you do move to that later on, I'd certainly ask that he be one to be admitted at that point in the meeting today, Mr. Chairman.
So I get a question, I guess I'm trying to understand. Has any entity, governmental entity in the state of Wyoming that we know of thus far prevented or is this widely used? I guess I know what it doesn't do. I'm trying to decide what it does do. But if we had an instance where we've had one of our government entities have some stipulations in their contract about having to use only unionized labor or non-unionized labor as a state, if you know.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. That I do not know the answer to. To date, I would certainly defer to perhaps Ms. Legursky when she testifies.
Other questions for Mr. McNiven? And you're representing the ABC today?
Yes.
Did you
Yes,
say
Mr.
that? I might have missed it.
Yes.
You did? Building contractors? Okay. Any questions? Representative Hornock, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that in these government contracts, there's a dollar amount. Once you get above that dollar amount, could you explain that again?
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hornock. Yes, the $35 million amount that I mentioned has to do with the Biden administration's executive order on federally funded projects and PLAs. That's where that 35 million comes in. This particular bill doesn't overlap with that. And particularly, that's a federally funded. Federal funds. That's certainly a dollar amount, but there is sometimes confusion, and I may have made it worse by doing that. And if I did, I apologize. And potentially one of the other speakers could clarify that further for you, but that's with the executive order.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, follow up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So in the amendment to this bill where it added the Wyoming statute 166108, that would only kind of come into play then on federally funded projects above the $35 million mark at this, as this is written, you know?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ornick, my understanding, again, for that amendment is that's for grants that went particularly for the airports that are funded differently than, for example, like your YDOTs or something like that. That is a matching program.
Okay. Yep. Representative Claston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for being late. I was presenting a bill across the hall, so I did, yes. Unopposed, so it was good. So, and I heard a little bit of the question when I walked in, but I missed it. So the way we currently operate, why is this bill needed?
Mr. McNiven.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative of Clausen, I would answer that by saying that it's best practice that government shouldn't be mandating one way or another, and that the decision for that labor pool should be left to the employer to choose the labor pools.
All right. Seeing no further questions, thanks. We'll go to, you said Mr. Ray, was that? We'll invite him in here. I believe he's already in the room. Oh, there you go. Welcome, Brandon. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Swanitzer and members of the committee. My name is Brandon Ray. As Travis said, I work with the Associated Builders and Contractors. So thank you for the opportunity to testify here in support of SF 147. At ABC, our members promote the merit shop construction philosophy, and we always want to ensure that public works contracts are procured through fair and open competition that encourages a level playing field. We strongly support SF 147 and encourage members of the committee to do the same. By prohibiting the mandated use of PLAs on public construction, this legislation guarantees a level playing field, as has been said by other folks. Today, approximately 89% of the U.S. construction workforce is non-union. In Wyoming. It sits at about 97%. So the overwhelming majority is unaffiliated with the union. To address exactly maybe what are in certain PLAs, they can vary, but almost all discourage these open shop contractors from competing to win these taxpayer funded projects. Provisions in PLAs usually include using the union as a representative of the workers on the job. The union hiring hall is used to obtain workers. Union work rules are followed. Union representation fees are paid, as well as into union benefit plans. And these workers, if they are not members of the union or become members of the union, are unlikely to see those benefits. Also, many times are double paying into their existing plans and these union plans. Altogether, these provisions that they're usually not a party to negotiating in the first place, they pretty widely discourage non-union employers and workers from bidding on these projects that are taxpayer funded. This can drive up costs of projects up to 20%. And it's a very difficult situation for this majority workforce in Wyoming and other places. So to address what we've talked about, need and things going on federally that I think have brought need here. As referenced, President Biden did issue an executive order mandating PLAs on all of these federal projects over 35 million that are fully federally funded. The thing that is important is, in addition to that, alongside there's been encouragements and actual hard incentives for PLA use to be used on state projects that are federally assisted. So they get a mix of state and federal money. In that situation, states are the ones that govern the bidding and the running of that project. And so their policies and their procurement processes stand superior. So the Biden administration has made PLA use on federally assisted projects, these grant programs, targeted sectors of the industry, including energy and infrastructure. They've made this a top priority. Guidance associated with these projects and grant programs all include these strong encouragements to consider implementing PLAs. Some require disclosure of the intent to use those PLAs. Some actually put percentage incentives on bids. This is to promote the use and make it seem as if you use PLAs in bidding these public projects, you're more likely to win grants or federal assistance. That is not true. These incentives have resulted in about 20% of bids coming back to the federal government for a lot of these projects, at about 1 in 5. 80% have come back completely bid fair and open, and many come from these 24 other states that have this policy in place. The reason that this has become necessary in these other states and Wyoming is people have seen writing on the wall about this conversation and have wanted to go ahead and protect the way that they do business, and protecting state procurement from these mandates is critical. You need to preserve the ability to bid public work in a fair way to all taxpayers in the industry. The contractor should be free to voluntarily adopt a project labor agreement. That still exists with this bill in place. What this bill does not eliminate the use. It prohibits the state and local governments from mandating them as a condition of bidding. This would simply make the way that Wyoming does do business historically as a matter of official policy. So in the face of a lot of these federal encouragements and the conversation around PLA use continuing to increase across the country, making the way that Wyoming sees doing business historically, putting that officially in the state code and making sure that this conversation does not need to happen moving forward is critical, as this conversation is not going away, especially under this administration. We want to keep all construction contractors and their workforce, having the opportunity to bid on public projects. Taxpayers will appreciate that as well. So in the interest of not taking too much time, I would be happy to answer any questions, and we absolutely support SF 147. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Any questions? Representative Yin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Maybe to repeat the question from the chairman for the previous speaker. Mr. Ray, do you know if there's been any actions like this in the state of Wyoming anywhere?
Mr. Ray, if you know.
Chairman, Representative Yin, thank you for the question. The use of PLAs on state and local projects in Wyoming has not been widespread. I believe there has, especially on the local level, been some examples historically, but it is not something that is used in Wyoming historically, because Wyoming has seen obviously fair and open bidding as the way to go. So discussing that in this context, the context of this bill itself, we feel we want to make sure that continues, and making sure that that is now in state policy, with all of the conversation, encouraging the use of these, the exploration, the pilot projects around these agreements. While Wyoming has not used them widespread over time, they certainly aren't going anywhere, and the conversation isn't going anywhere. So putting this in state policy is good business.
Any other questions, committee? We have follow-up, Representative Yin, go ahead.
Mr. Ray, do you represent a national organization or are you an organization in Wyoming?
Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
I do. I represent the national organization, the Associated Builders and Contractors, but we work alongside, we are a partner with our chapter organizations, of which there is one in Colorado that works in the entire Rocky Mountain West. And so our contractors, one of which is on here as well to testify if given the opportunity, can speak to his experience here in Wyoming. But we are active in the area and work with the construction industry across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. See, Representative Ward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ray, if you are familiar with the Janus decision, which came from the state where I came from, can you comment on how that connects and applies and agrees with this bill? Thanks.
Sure, Mr. Ray, if you know.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. So the Janus decision does not necessarily directly coincide with PLA use. However, there have been several instances of legal cases that have examined how Janus will in the future or now, what the implications are for PLA use. You're correct in kind of tying these together, as that deals with compelled unionization and union representation and all of these things. While there has been no crossover yet, there is, I think, plenty of legal minds across the country that would see the Janus, the precedent that is set with Janus, as holding weight as it refers to PLAs. As of now, there has been no official precedent set that Janus and project labor agreement used by public entities crossover, but the philosophy remains the same.
Follow up for the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the folks watching and maybe the folks at home, could you just briefly explain what the Janus decision did?
Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. The Janus decision essentially, as far as I understand it, basically made compelled unionization, especially in public sector unions, that they are not allowed to collect fees from non-union members. And that applies, I think, both to public and private sector. But the Supreme Court, specifically in the Janus decision, ruled that union fees that are compelled payment in the public sector obviously violate the Constitution. And I believe that it's really based on the First Amendment there. So it overturned a previous decision from the 70s. But essentially, it explained that compelled union fees are a violation of the First Amendment.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Ray, for being here. I hope it's warmer wherever you are. It's a little cold here. All right, with that committee, anybody want to go next? Ms. Legursky, you were referenced earlier. I don't know if you want to testify in the bill. Welcome, Katie, to Labor Health. Always good to see you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. I'm Katie Legursky. I'm the Executive Director of the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. AGC of Wyoming strongly believes that the choice of whether to adapt a collective bargaining agreement should be left to the contractor, who is the employer, and their employees, and that such the choice should not be imposed as a condition for competing for or performing on a public funded project. Government mandates and preferences for project labor agreements can restrain competition, drive up cost. In the case where the use of project labor agreements would benefit a particular project, the construction contractors otherwise qualified to perform the work on the project would be the first to recognize the fact and adopt a project labor agreement voluntarily. Those would also be the most qualified to negotiate the terms of such an agreement. Therefore, we are supportive of Senate File 147, which codifies and protects the status quo of how public construction projects are currently led in the state of Wyoming. Fair and open, where a public entity cannot require or prohibit the use of a project labor agreement as a condition for bidding or winning a contract. Either a union or an open shop contractor should agree with this concept. Leave it up to the contractor to decide whether to adopt a project labor agreement or not the state entity. Thank you. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Okay, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was testimony earlier that 97% of construction workers are non-union in Wyoming. Is that your understanding as well?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Hornock, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the data shows that 2.4% of Wyoming's private construction workers are union workers.
Do we, so I'm still trying to work on, is there an issue right now? Have we had any PLAs in Wyoming that have had, and if we've had any, has there been an issue yet that we know of? Or is this, I think Mr. McNiven said best practice. We want to make sure we keep a level playing field. Just making sure, do you know that we've not had a level playing field or we've had an issue yet in Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, we have had occasions on federal contracts coming on down that have tried to use PLAs in the past, where we had to get the involvement of our congressional delegation a number of years ago with the building of the Job Corps Center in Riverton. In the beginning, they did want to use project labor agreements, so we did involve our congressional delegation, since it was a federally funded project at that time. With the use with F.E. Warren here, we have seen occasions where they have wanted to use project labor agreements. They have been on federal projects, to my knowledge, not on state funded projects. As testimony that we have already heard, it is being strongly encouraged by the current federal administration for any federally assisted projects and money that is coming down from the federal government to use project labor agreements. So for instance, right now, when we're referring to federally assisted projects, we do have a lot of money coming down from the federal government. For instance, YDOT contracts are federally assisted. They are not required to adopt federally PLAs. So they would not be under the federal executive order for PLAs because it's a federally funded. They will continue to operate as is moving forward, but there is strong encouragement from the federal government for any federally assisted funds coming down to the states to adopt the PLAs. This bill simply just codifies what we're currently doing in Wyoming, leaving the choice to the contractor, who is the employer, to decide what best for his employees, whether to adopt a collective or a PLA, leaving it up to the person bidding it and the one that wins the contract. letting them make the choice rather than the government entity or the project owner.
Thanks. And then one more, I just want to double check this doesn't interfere at all with preference for Wyoming workers. I know the crux of the bill is going to PLAs, but some of the language entering into any agreements with any person, and then it says including a labor organization. But we've made sure we're not going to have any kind of disruption in our preference laws for Wyoming workers. Someone's checked and made sure this dovetails and appropriately and doesn't cause any issues. Has that been looked at?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Regardless of whether it's a public funded project, if there is a PLA, if a contractor does bid the project, if he is a union contractor, preference still applies. If it's a state funded contract, labor preference still applies regardless of what type of contractor is bidding on that project or is successful bidder. The preference and the in-state labor preference still does apply regardless if it's open shop or a union contractor.
Nice, just to make sure for me sometimes. All right, other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much.
And
Oh, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, one other thing really quickly, there was a question earlier on what the definition of a PLA is. The common definition of a public labor agreement, and if you guys Google it, this is the common definition. It's a pre-hire collective bargaining agreement with one or more labor unions that establishes the terms and conditions of employment for a specific construction project. That is the common definition of a project labor agreement. Thank you.
Ms. Wojcicki. All right, there's a couple people here to testify. I'm not sure, welcome, Ms. Johnson. I'm guessing some of these people are in your greater sphere, and so there might maybe be some coordination. Do you? Great. With that, welcome, Tammy, and other guests to the front table. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Tammy Johnson. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming State AFL-CIO. And for those of you who don't know, Wyoming AFL-CIO is an umbrella organization that supports the work of our labor unions across the country. And here in Wyoming, we have 7,000 members, affiliated members. We also have several thousand members who are not affiliated with AFL-CIO. Before you today, we brought some of our friends to the room. These are construction workers. These are people who are being directly affected by your decision on this bill today. So to start with, Mr. Chairman, I think as others have said, when this bill started out, it was a reaction to the current administration's proposal on federal contracts. And nowhere in the executive order can I find the word assisted projects. All I can find is a large-scale construction project. This applies to large-scale construction projects, and this is straight from the executive order, means a federal construction project within the United States for which the total estimated cost of the construction contract to the federal government is $35 million or more. So anything that YDOT gets that's 35 million or more is going to be subject to a federal PLA. And I know that the bringers of this bill thought that this bill would stop that. And with the amendment that was put in there, it's not going to change anything at the federal level. So we don't like mandates from the federal government. I get that. It's not anything that we have anything to do with or that we can prevent. But what this bill does on the state level is preclude union workers, the people who sit here before you today, from having access to jobs. The preface of the bill, subsection A, under 16(6)(122, says that the legislature finds the intent of this bill to provide more economical, non-discriminatory, neutral, and efficient procurement of these contracts. Well, I struggle with that because we heard today that sometimes PLAs are more economical. Sometimes they are neutral and sometimes they're more efficient. And so how does a bill like this that calls out labor organizations specifically in the bill, how does that make it non-discriminatory and neutral? I don't really understand. And in a state where we don't have project labor agreements on state projects, maybe my members go way back and we have some codgers there that know some things. They said maybe the Buffalo Bill Dam in Cody was under a PLA in 1910, but that's the last time a state project that they could remember was under a PLA. So we can hope all we want that this is going to stop federal contracts, and that's going to shake out when they write the rules and when those things get done. So I don't think this bill is going to change anything with federal contracts. And I understand that that's the desire of many people in the legislature. When we talk about the impact that PLAs will have on the state, I'd like to think about what's happened already with the way we handle workers in the state and the way the preference statutes work. Currently, for Wyoming workers to be on a state-funded project or a public works project, if the contractor doesn't have enough workers, they have to go to Workforce Services and get workers. They have to ask, they have to write a letter and say, I'm looking for workers. And this is true of out-of-state contractors as well as in-state contractors. In-state contractors hopefully have hired Wyoming workers, but if they haven't, they have to go to Workforce Services and say, hey, I need Wyoming workers on this project. Now, there's exceptions to that. They can say they're not highly skilled, so I don't have to hire them. They're not, there's a few exceptions so why they don't have to hire Wyoming workers. What they don't have to do is check with the local hiring halls and the apprenticeship programs, which is where these people work. So they're automatically excluded from being looked at by out-of-state contractors, anyone working on a public works project. The UW dorm project just got bid, and that went to the plumbing for that went to an out-of-state contractor. Our plumbers who are here in this room with us today were with a contractor who was going to use them on that project, but they were outbid, and so now these workers are not going to be working on that project. That's going to go to an out-of-state firm that's going to go to Workforce Services and say, I need highly skilled workers. And how many highly skilled plumbers are sitting on the books at Workforce Services? I have no idea, but it's a guarantee that there's going to be out-of-state workers on that project. So the way our preference statute is currently working is not helping all of our Wyoming workers get to work. And I would like to address that in the interim. I know that's not germane to this bill.
Oh, good. Okay.
But
I was trying to follow where we're going, but yep.
But it's part of the bigger picture of when we call out labor organizations as the thing in this bill that we're not going to support, when we already have statutes that work kind of against labor organizations. I struggle with that. And the workers in this room struggle with that. The reason they're able to come here today, Mr. Chairman, is because they're not working. And no, it's not because of the weather. I wish it were. They work in all kinds of weather. As you know, we're Wyoming tough. This bill does not prevent labor agreements with contractors. And that was stated earlier. You know, contractors can set up those project labor agreements. So that can happen. It only prevents cities, towns, counties, UW, community colleges, and the state from having them. And they don't have them typically, but if they wanted to have them, this violates their right to contract. So every organization has a right to contract freely with the best market that they can. And this takes away a tool in the toolbox for the state. So if a project labor agreement were going to benefit, say, the town hall that was being built in Cody can't do it because this bill doesn't allow them to. So if you want to keep status quo, you'll keep it by voting no on this bill, but you'll also give our union workers, our workers that are here in the room with you today, a leg up and a chance at this stuff. The tool in the toolbox that you're going to remove can help reduce the overall cost of construction projects. It can promote workforce development in the trades, which is much needed. We've heard over and over again that there's a worker shortage in this state, that we struggle to get workers out on the job. Well, our apprenticeship programs that train trades workers can only take so many students because they can't put them out on jobs. And bills like this close the door even further to get workers out on the job, apprentices out on the job. So we have burgeoning apprenticeship programs that are turning students away and saying, we're sorry, we don't have anywhere to send you. So this is a key component in developing the workforce in this state. And I think we need to think about the long-term impacts of a bill like this if we're gonna promote it. The other thing that we were turning our backs on if we support this bill and pass this bill is improving safety on construction sites. I don't know if you're aware, most of you are new this year. So Wyoming is the #1 leader in the nation in on-the-job deaths. We are 4 times the national average. And everybody says, oh, that's because the kind of state we're in, the kind of work we do. No, that's no excuse. Construction workers should not be being killed on the job. And neither should anyone. We should all go home at the end of the day and see our families. And PLAs also build into them safety provisions. Now, we know that this is not going to change how we do business in Wyoming. Whether you pass this bill or not, it's not going to change if we have PLAs because we simply don't have them. But I ask you to vote no on this bill because of the potential impact it could have on workers if a community did want to use a PLA or if an entity did want to use a PLA. I think that's all I have to share, Mr. Chairman. I would like one more thing. I know that you received a handout, and I just want to clarify with you that there's some things in here that don't apply to Wyoming. When a PLA is issued and a non-union worker is at a union hall, they are not required to pay union dues. That's in our statutes. It's called right to work law. And they cannot be forced to pay union dues or join the union. Under federal law, union halls are required to allow non-union members to be on the books, to be on the roll and get a job just like anyone else, and they cannot be discriminated against. So some of the things you heard earlier from the gentleman on the screen just don't apply in Wyoming. We're a right to work state. And Representative Ward, the Janus decision only applied to public employees. And it said that you can't force public employees to pay dues, and it eliminated the fair share state concept that was prevalent in a lot of states in the country. We're a right to work state, so it doesn't impact anything that we do here. I brought with me
Let me make sure we don't have any questions for you
Oh,
before
sure.
I kind of dug a little deep and now you're gonna get some questions. I think.
Yeah, I'm
Representative
happy
Ward,
to
go
answer
ahead.
questions. It's
Thank
my
you,
passion.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How does this bill preclude union access to jobs since it neither requires nor prohibits contracting with unionized entities?
Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Representative Ward. I think it just makes the hurdle a little higher for union entities. Because before this bill, it was possible to have those project labor agreements on the books. And remember, we're only talking about 3% of our workforce here, right? So we're not talking about a huge chunk of people in our state that would be on these jobs. But I think it just makes the hurdle a little higher. And these workers struggle hard enough in this state to get work. And by putting this bill in, it makes it harder for them.
But it doesn't preclude. I think
It doesn't
your-
preclude it.
Your
You've heard it.
testimony that. yeah.
Yep, you've heard it here today. It doesn't preclude it. And really this bill does nothing. If you look at the line that says, I am concerned about the preference statute, Mr. Chairman,
Hold that thought
because.
real fast. Let me get
Okay,
Representative Ward.
sure.
another-
Sorry, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does it make the hurdle higher since it evens the playing field between union and non-union shops?
Mr. Chairman,
Johnson,
Representative
go ahead.
Ward, thank you. I don't think it does level the playing field, Representative Ward, to have to call out one organization above others. That's not even. That's saying you don't get to play in this game, but anybody else can. And so if we were to neutralize this bill and take out the words, imagine that if we took out the words labor organization, what would this bill do? I don't think it would do anything different. So I don't understand why that is in there. And Mr. Chairman, on the preference statute, the term that was added in by Senator Case. Let's see. It says entering into with any person, including a labor organization, you cannot require, prefer, or prohibit. So how do you have a preference statute that prefers Wyoming contractors at 5%? If this bill says you can't prefer any other person, any person. So I think the bill is a little muddy, and I think it's clumsy, and it needs to be, if it were going to be anything, it should not call out a certain group of workers in the state, and it should not walk on this dangerous line of eliminating our preference statutes or messing with our preference statutes.
You did bring some people with you.
I did.
Representative Hearn, did you have a question first?
Yes, thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. If the feds are pushing for more labor, unions to be involved. It sounds like the federal government is pushing that labor organizations down our throats. Does that make any sense? It sounds like it's coming from the federal government if we took that line out of there.
If you'd like to comment, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hearn, I'm not sure I understand you because this bill doesn't touch the federal stuff with the amendment subject to WS 16-6
Mr. Chairman, if we took out labor organizations out of the bill, that's exactly what the federal government is pushing down our throats, it sounds like. Not only on $35 million and above, but everything.
I'm not, yeah, if you'd like to respond to that, but if not, we'll just move on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Hearn, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. I don't feel like in Wyoming, in a right to work state, that unions are being pushed down anyone's throat here because we don't have that kind of power. I'd like to think we did, but we don't. So,
All right, who have you brought with you today?
Bella, would you like to speak?
Yes.
Welcome.
Okay, let's do this. I'll turn.
Thank you. My name is Bella. I'm an apprentice with the local union 192. I came about through the Climb Wyoming program, which is a great program that helps mothers who are, raising their children independently. And I graduated that program and pursued this career with the union. And it's been an awesome journey so far. Unfortunately, I'm not working right now. There's work out of town that I'm not able to attend to. But yeah, I don't know enough to really speak so much on this, but I know enough that this would hinder what I'm trying to acquire for myself and my family.
And tell us
Thank
what
you.
192 is, the trade.
Yeah, it's our local apprentice plumbers and pipe fitters
Plumbers and
and
pipe fitters.
HVAC union.
Any questions for Bella? Representative Hornat, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you trying to get the skills for this stuff. Have you been actively searching for jobs in the area?
Go ahead. Oh, you just have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Yeah, we're friendly.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hornak, Representative. The union is doing that for me. Dan Meyer is our director, yeah, and he's doing best he can in that part. I don't particularly like. Yeah, that's his duty. Sorry.
The question?
Yeah, placing apprentices is what is his specific job.
Nice. All right, sir, welcome. Floor is yours.
Good morning, distinguished council members or committee members. My name is Adrian Munoz. I've been with 192, the local hall here in Cheyenne for 9+ years. I'm a resident of Wyoming from my birth. I was born in Powell, Wyoming, and just moved around the state. Working in construction has been my trade, and I've worked in both non-union and union. My father was a union member, heavy equipment operator with the Wyoming Hall, and they took care of my family, himself and us. They seemed really fair to me because my father meant the world to me. I know he might not have been nothing but another commodity on a construction site in some cases, but he was my dad. They took care of him so well that I felt like I could put my faith in them as well. And so I've done so. It took me a while to get to this point, but I'm a welder, fitter. Out of my hall, we dispatch plumbers and fitters. I currently am not at work. I've worked out of the state for I worked in Wyoming for approximately 6 years, Poly Frontier. They decided to go non-union, so that was fine. A lot of us went on the road. And so ever since then, I've been working out of the state. I've maintained my residence here because it's my home. Wyoming's where I live. That's where I hang my hat. Every bit of money that I make, everything that I do goes to build my future here. This is where my home is. It's where my loyalties lie. I'm not a part of any syndicate somewhere else in the rest of the country, whatever. But I would encourage you to decline this bill. In my opinion, looking at it from my perspective, here in Wyoming, it's a right to work state. We already have a lot of things in place that prevent the unfair treatment of labor groups trying to get jobs. And from my understanding, that's what's come before this committee today is a bill that has basically not been an issue. And in my practice, in some things, if it's not broken, why fix it? Why put in more legislation that produces language that could be, well, a little bit sensitive? I mean, I don't like showing up on a job or taking a job because I'm a Mexican. They don't have enough Mexicans on the job, so now they're going to take me in. I take offense to that. Like my sister here, she's coming up in the trade. She's making something of herself and for her family and for her future. I want her to succeed. If she succeeds, I win. When she wins, I win. And when we win, we all win. We're Wyoming residents, just like you. I don't need somebody to come into my house and tell me how to do my business if I'm already doing it properly. Wyoming has always been a right to work state. We've always treated our workers fairly. We've always done this already. So if this is not a Wyoming problem, then why are we doing anything about it?
Questions for Mr. Munoz? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your testimony, sir. You look fairly familiar. I might have had you on a job or two before, so.
It's possible.
Yeah. How long have you been a member of the union and worked for the union? And then how much, I guess, various during that time have you been out of work? And how much time currently have you been out of work?
Currently, right now, I've been out of work since the first of the year. I've been off and on about a couple months periodically. I've been with the union for 9+ years now. During that time, my most steady form of employment was working at HollyFrontier, where I worked for 6 years. After leaving HollyFrontier, I went to work in Colorado, up in Denver, Colorado, not very far away, helping remodel some of their heating elements inside of one of their public schools. We didn't have any of that kind of work here in Wyoming that's available for us to do. But it kind of comes and goes. So like right now, like I said, I've been laid off since the first of the year. You know, I would love to work in my own state, but if the work is not there, I know they say that we have a shortage of labor, but I'm ready to go to work. I'm ready to do something. But you know, at the same time, you know, I got to put food on the table because I got people that are counting on me. And so, you know, this is my home, but right now I have to work out of state because that's where the work's at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there work out of state that you could go to? I know it's not it's not always fun to do that, but is there work out of state around the
yes.
area?
Go ahead quickly. Yep.
I'm sorry, but you know, a lot of the reasons why, like with the union, the reason why I like being a part of the union is because I can go to work. Like, you know, there's no work in Wyoming, but I'm not going to starve to death. But the answer is like, you know, I could go to Montana. There is lots of work around the country. It presents a lot of different problems, you know, at home. When you got to leave your family at home and you got to go someplace else and work, I don't get to, in some cases, it's far enough away to where I don't get to come home very often. And so it makes things hard at home, on the home front. You know, my spouse, she has to take care of everything herself. Any problems that come up, I can't just jump in a vehicle, fly on a plane and get back here, you know? So it's difficult. but it is possible to work out of state. Absolutely.
Further questions, hopefully in regard to the bill. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if this question has already been asked and answered. I apologize for being late, but is there something within the union that prevents you from taking non-union jobs? So if you're laid off now, can you go and find your own employment or can you not?
So, oh, Mr. Chairman, sorry, been disrespecting this whole time. There's nothing that prevents me from finding work. There are certain things, like for an example, I'm a welder fitter. Okay, so that's what I do as my trade, and that's what the hall that I'm a part of. The idea is I can go to work as in any restaurant. I can go to work in any place where it's not a part of my trade currently. The idea is that, we are a union, we are a collective organization of workers, and we're trying to work and look out for the best of our interests, just like every organization is to some degree. Okay, like these people bringing this bill. They want this bill because it's going to protect their organization. It's going to present their organization a little bit more strongly than maybe it is in some situations. That's what it all comes down to. So if I go and take a non-union job that's not paying for my benefits or my retirement, but they just want to put me to work for $25 an hour, when I can go ahead and stay with the union, make my benefits and make 36, then yeah, that's what I want to do. And that's what the whole idea, as far as being a collective organization or a union, is it's just self-destructive to go ahead and say that you're an organization, you put yourself together, but you're going to disperse that.
Okay.
Good
follow up,
Mr.
sure.
Chairman, thank you. So mentioning benefits, and so if you've been laid off and aren't working, is the union still paying your benefits, or are you without benefits currently, or how does that work? And then a second question, if you could answer at the same time, if you were to take a non-union job, do you get kicked out of the union, or do they stop paying your benefits, or can you just have work on the side?
So
go ahead.
My benefits, we have what we call a bank. It's all based upon hours worked. So I have worked, like quite a few hours, and this, like overtime hours, it all comes off a percentage. So I can make over the hours that are required for my benefits to be able to be met. So I still have insurance. I still have my retirement. I still have all my benefits. Even though I've been laid off, it'll still carry over forever, not ever, but for a period of time and months. If I was to take a non-union job, I could still pay my dues. I could still keep my stuff going current. Just, it would be like being out of work, as long as it's not in a trade that would prohibit my other fellow union brothers from getting a job.
All right, other questions? Seeing none, thank you all for being here this morning. Anything else, Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I just wanted to add in regard to Representative Penn's questions, kind of leaning towards what if you were non-union or if you work non-union. Wyoming statute 27-7-110 is part of the right to work statute. And it says that no person is required to abstain or refrain from membership in a labor organization as a condition of employment or continuation of employment. So I would hope that this bill will not interfere with that statute. I can see that it could have a tendency to, if we got real aggressive with this notion that we're not going to allow, we're going to try to prevent some union type contracts that, by the way, are not just for union workers, all contractors, everybody can bid on project labor agreements. I don't know if that was emphasized enough, but it's not exclusively union. It's a misconception to think that. So I appreciate your time and thank you for listening. And we hope that you'll vote no on this bill. Thank you.
We have about 15 minutes for additional public comment. How many people, just so I can get a sense, want to speak on this bill? Just one, huh? Come on down, sir. Two. Okay, you'll be next, ma'am. Welcome to Labor Health. Floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Adam Maxey with Americans for Prosperity Wyoming. I am pinch hitting for our state director, Tyler Lindholm, this morning. So I'm going to keep it brief as it also seems like I'm bringing up the rear and you guys need to get to the floor. So on its face, Americans for Prosperity wants to allow for individuals to reach their potential, and a lot of ways in that is to find employment, to bring home money for their family, to be fulfilled in their work, to have opportunity to do so, particularly without government picking and choosing winners and losers, or who is allowed to have that opportunity or not. So we support Senate File 147 for the simple fact that government should not require or prohibit any stipulations for the bids of these contracts, or who is allowed to submit for the work and attempt to gain that job. Excuse me. So, as you've heard several times this morning, those agreements should be left between the employer and their employees in a private contract, and should not be stipulations for the ability to apply for a job here with Public Works in the state of Wyoming. That you also look, and that would also provide the best playing field and hopefully the most savings for taxpayers in this process, which I think we all find important in those expenditures, and finding the most efficient, effective, and quality ways to use tax dollars, especially when it comes to construction projects. So with that, I would like to reiterate that Americans for Prosperity asked for your yes vote today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Maxey? Seeing none, Adam, but thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Tell Tyler we miss seeing him. Ma'am, you want to testify? I miss seeing him. And then we might have one online. Mr. Seawald, if you want to testify, raise your hand for me and you'll be next. With that, welcome. Floor is yours.
I turn it green. Okay, there we go. I have a very loud voice, so I usually don't need a mic. My name is Lana Wakefield. I am a member of Labor's Local 1271. I'm also the president over there. I have been in the union for 17 years. I've lived in Wyoming my whole entire life. I'm asking you vote no on this bill. Some of the things that you're talking about on the PLA, or that some of the Zoom guys were talking about on the PLA. If you're on a job that is a PLA, you're not forced to pay union dues. Wyoming's a right to work state. Do you still get those benefits? Yes, you do. You're not excluded from the benefits. As president of Local 1271, I took an oath that we will defend the rights of all workers, men and women, union or non-union. We have had several calls. We get calls at our union hall for people that work at McDonald's because they don't know where to turn. They're not our members, but do we help them? Absolutely. So I'm asking you vote no on this bill. Thank you.
And if you could remind the committee, 1271 is?
We are the labor union, and yes, Labor's International Union of North America, LIUNA.
Okay.
And we cover the entire state of Wyoming.
Thanks. Questions for Ms. Wakefield? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the work you do. Can you give any specific examples of how this bill would prevent the ability for people to go to work?
Go ahead, Ms. Wakefield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hornick. If you vote yes on this bill and they're not signed to a PLA, what's stopping the other contractors, non-union contractors, out-of-state contractors from bringing in out-of-state workers? With the PLA, like you have someone you have to answer to say where those workers are coming from. When we're building these projects, the University of Wyoming is a good example. If you drive over there and you look at those construction workers and you look at the license plates, Colorado, Texas, Louisiana,
Oklahoma. Very few plates are Wyoming plates. This bill also protects Wyoming workers.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, Ms. Wickfield. All right, going on. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
All right, thank you for the opportunity.
We'll go to Mr. Seawald online. Randy, floor is yours.
See, thank you. All right, appreciate that. I'm going to move to my points here. And I know you're on a time crunch here, so I'll get to this as fast as I can. I'm representing Encore Electric. We're an employee-owned Wyoming electrical contractor in support of this bill. If I could, I want to provide some basis for my support, both from a personal and business perspective. First of all, personally, I have worked in this electrical trade my entire 50-year career, both as a licensed electrician in the field and as a business owner and manager. Today, I still carry an active master electrician's license that I earned in 1981. To be brief, I don't want this to become an issue. It's certainly not for me between the quality of union labor versus non-union labor. I carry no animosity. And so I've got many friends from high school that went into union construction trades that we remain close friends to this day. We're talking about my company, though. Encore Electric has built many projects in Wyoming over the last 20 years. The NCAR Lab, EchoStar, and a handful of projects at the University of Wyoming. We were even the electrical contractor during the recent 3-year remodel of the state capitol. Under a PLA, we would have not been that chosen contractor simply because we would not have agreed to the terms of collective bargaining required under a PLA. But 10 years ago, it became very important to Encore to establish a permanent Wyoming office, and here's why. Microsoft, as you may know, had just begun building their data center campus outside of Cheyenne. Their original out-of-state electrical contractor, by the way, just failed to perform. They chose us, and here's what's happened since then. Oh, in that 10-year period, we have delivered over 2 million field craft labor hours during that 10-year constant presence on that campus. As that project expanded, it started out slow, but it grew fast. We hired as many Wyoming craft workers as we could to supply the daily crews, at times reaching 200 people. We are still on site today, and so are those workers. It was mentioned earlier that there might be some concern with respect to safety with non-union contractors. I can only speak for my firm right now, but over the last half a dozen years, we have consistently maintained an EMR rating in the low 50 percentile. I don't know, we really can't get much lower than that based upon the stats by which we're evaluated. In fact, OSHA has recently awarded us with a blue status. And briefly what that means is that due to our record of safety, the OSHA inspections are minimal and they're high level. And anyway, you know, it's interesting, the supply demand for labor, as I've witnessed it over the last 50 years, is at an unprecedented imbalance. As an example, because I just saw this the other day, Colorado construction unemployment is at 1.9%. I don't know what Wyoming is. I hadn't had a chance to review that in totality. But my point in sharing all the above is twofold. None of the projects I mentioned previously were done under a PLA. Those mission critical clients, you talk about data centers and research labs and the state capitol, they could have chosen anyone. They knew it, and so did we. You know, meritocracy, in my view, is a foundation principle in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. To conclude, let me just offer this. You know, this mantra as iron sharpens iron, to me, is synonymous with fair and open competition. You know, we welcome bid competition from union companies all the time. You know why? Because they do good work. And we're happy that they do, because we do as well. So clients like the state of Wyoming, both public and private, have some good choices. Let's allow them to remain having those choices. The free market system spurs innovation, and may the best succeed within it. That's my testimony. Again, Encore Electric supports this bill.
Appreciated, Mr. Seawald. Representative Yen will go first. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Seawald, you said you were a master electrician. Are you licensed in the state of Wyoming?
I am not licensed in the state of Wyoming. I'm not required to, because our company does carry master licenses for the state, and all the electricians, of course, carry the required licensing.
Okay. Representative Hornak, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. not sure if you remember, but we did the IT building at the University of Wyoming together. So you guys did a great job up there, by
Thank
the
you.
way.
Thank you for that.
Recruiting Wyoming workforce, people out of Wyoming to supply your workforce needs.
Mr. Seawold, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question itself.
Follow it up there.
Yeah, thank you. Are you actively recruiting in the state of Wyoming for your workforce needs?
At all times, at all times. And again, we encourage, high school. We actually recruit at local high schools. We have a crew that travels around and try to let kids understand that, they don't need college to succeed in life. I mean, we're talking $100,000 a year potential occupations, of course, through a 4-year apprenticeship program, which we pay for. We support that, the tuition for apprenticeship programs. So, you obviously Wyoming has a limited population and resource base, but right now, at some point in time on the Microsoft campus, I think just a little above 30% of the employees working were Wyoming residents. They still are. Even our supervision and management up there, we want this to be a Wyoming business unit because there's, it's got a great future. And so, we're also in Montana. What we do, and it's probably obvious to you, we share resources from our Northern Colorado office, Fort Collins mostly. We have an office in Montana. And again, when we hit these peaks, we just kind of bring people in. Of course, they can't enter Wyoming without proper licensing. So we encourage that too across our entire field craft. And so it's a challenge with this unemployment rate and things like that. But I'm optimistic that in the near decade or two that we're going to get skilled trades back into the career path of high school kids.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Seawold. Representative Clouston, question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Seawold. I think we can all appreciate the fact that we get better wages and better benefits because of the history of unions. When you look at this bill, why do you think this bill is needed here in Wyoming?
Well, I'll tell you why. I think simply because without this bill, a PLA agreement, and look, there are entities that will promote those strongly. A PLA agreement will exclude open shop contractors such as my firm from participating clearly in PLA agreements. And I could certainly send you some examples that the labor would have to fall under a organized labor agreement. And so we're not willing to do that. We hire from cradle to grave, of the 60 owners of Encore Electric, employee owners, most of them, like me, started out as apprentices in the field and they worked their way up through. So, we spend a lot of time investing in people. And with respect to wages, I will tell you right now, there's no argument there. Our people, in many cases, are paid above union scale, plus our incentive programs, our bonus programs. Again, that's what meritocracy is all about. So I don't know. I don't want to go on and on with a commercial about my company. I'll give you a list of the people we've worked for, including the people that sort of manage the Capitol facility. They can tell you about our performance. But I hope it's a long answer to a very short question.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Seawold. Have a great Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you.
We have one more time, no more public comment. You do, sir. Welcome.
Yeah.
And then Senator Anderson, after that, we'll close public comment, but bring you back. Welcome to Labor Health. Floor is yours. Just make sure that green light is on the microphone.
Okay. All right. My name is Russ Pafford. I was born and raised in this state. I was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship program when I was 18 out of high school. As a member of Local 192, we built the powerhouses and everything up west. But I'd ask you to vote no on this bill today for this one and only reason is there's such a misconception about what a PLA is. And who does the negotiating? The state of Wyoming are the entities that you got the hammer. You're the ones that are going to decide how to form this PLA. You've got the contract with the contractors, whether it be the ABC Association or union affiliated contractors. You guys set the tone of what you want that project to be, money wise, benefit wise. But the biggest thing is apprenticeship. We all know that the majority of these construction jobs that go on in this state are manned by non-union or out-of-state contractors, whether it be union or non-union. Most of them don't have any registered apprenticeship programs. They don't care to bring apprentices on the job. They bring people that they know they can count on, make money with. They don't want to even take a chance to hire apprentices. So if you, with the PLA, you can dictate to these out-of-state contractors, they will have apprentices on the job. The state's dumping a lot of money into career technology. You guys are, trying to get these high school kids to choose pass and trades, stuff like this. They can't learn it if they can't work on the job. And with you guys doing away with the PLAs, you're doing away with that tool in your toolbox, dictating on these public work jobs, how many apprentices will be there, whether, in-state, out-of-state, whatever. But that's the biggest reason I'd ask you guys to vote no on it, is it hinders future growth as far as the training and skills needed.
Questions, Mr. Pappard? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Russ, for being here today. I'll just go ahead and assume everyone else in the room is probably not in favor of the bill. Would that be a fair statement? Okay, just checking. All right, with that, we will close public comment. Senator Anderson, did you have any closing comments before the committee assumedly works the bill? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we've talked a lot about PLAs, but the bill is really about keeping the procurement to union and non-union, not stopping anybody from bidding on the job. And if you've tried to bid a job in Wyoming lately, you've known that there are not enough workers to fulfill it. We need everyone we can get to do that. One question was about have PLAs been used in Wyoming? I've been in this business for 40 years with a heavy equipment dealer, and there's been 2 PLAs that I know of building power plants, and it was privately funded. They did PLAs because it was convenient, because then they could turn that over to this group and they took care of it. But the 2 plants that I know of in Rock Springs and Gillette were all built by out-of-state labor. There was no labor in the state that could fulfill those kind of huge needs that they had. So those are the only 2 PLAs I know of that were used. The question came up about the $35 million limit from Representative Hornak. That 16-6-108 has nothing to do with that. It's that if it's a grant from the federal government, then we have to follow the federal government rules. And it doesn't matter about the dollar amount. The 35 million is just a nuance that's come with the latest. And most of our grants are less than 35 million, but we would still follow federal rules. Those are the only 2 I heard that. I would really appreciate your vote on this. We've worked on this before. The bill's been up before and passed in either house and then defeated in either house in the past. So really appreciate your favorable vote. And I'd stand for any questions.
Do you have a question, Representative Cloud?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as I read through this, I just want to make sure if the state of Wyoming still wants to enter into a PLA for a project, this does not stop the state of Wyoming from doing that. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct. That's correct. The state of Wyoming or anybody else.
Representative Hornak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. There was testimony earlier about a safety factor in construction. Do you think by instituting this bill we're treading on thin ice with safety? Is there going to be safety concerns?
Right,
Mr.
Anderson?
Chairman, that's a good question. I think those safety issues are industry-wide and company by company that, we have morning safety meetings, not just in the mining, but in the construction also. Every morning, everybody has a safety meeting. Everybody is really trying hard to improve our safety record. And it pays off in a lot of cases that we have safer workers. It was reported that we are the worst. And when you dig down into those details, there's a lot of issues in those details. And so it isn't because our industries aren't trying to be as safe as they can, union, non-union, PLA or otherwise.
Okay. Thank you much, Senator. With
Thank
that,
you.
we'll totally close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on Senate File 147? Moved by Ward, seconded by O'Hearn. Discussion or amendments, Representative Yin. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment on page 2, line 20. So this is the part where it says you can't otherwise discriminate, except we do that in the Wyoming Preference Act. So I'd like to make an amendment that we add after Romanet 2, except subject to the Wyoming Preference Act of 1971, comma.
So that would be before the word otherwise.
Correct.
You would insert except subject to the Wyoming
Preference Act.
Preference Act of 1971, or whatever that statutory citation is, I'm guessing. Is there a second for that amendment? Going wide, seconded by Chadwick. Discussion on the amendment. Any more you want to say, Representative Yin?
Mr. Chairman, we do discriminate with the Wyoming Preference Act, so I want to make sure that we don't have a conflict between this statute and that statute.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just not sure it's necessary because those are two separate actions in law, two separate places in law. I do know that we do offer a preference, 5% preference to Wyoming bidding. I'm not sure that the idea of discrimination is necessarily within that statute type of thing. That's a preference, not a discrimination type of thing. Because when you actually lay out the bid, when you write down the bid and track it through, you actually have to add those numbers back in so that you know where the playing field is on a level with each individual bid. You have to do the math is what I'm saying. So it's, you kind of know where the bids shake out in the end.
Representative Yin, more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, just to say that if you are a bidder who cannot acquire enough Wyoming workers to fulfill the Wyoming Preference Act, you basically can't bid on it. So I think it does do what Romanet 2 says. So we just need to make sure that those two don't conflict. So that's my motion.
All right, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Oh.
That amendment is passed. Other discussion or amendments on the bill? Representative Ward, go ahead.
I'm going to be for this bill. When the free market wins, we all win. This bill ensures an even footing for union and non-union shops because it neither requires nor prohibits contracting with union shops. In short, it encourages a meritocracy. In the state where I came from, absence of statutes like this led to only hiring of union shops and the government picking winners and losers. It drove up costs and vastly reduced competition. I am strongly in favor of this bill.
Thank you. I think we can all agree we're happy not to be Illinois. Other thoughts, Representative Hornock, is that you're just holding a pen, Representative Yin?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think I'll only just say that this is a bill that basically singles out labor organizations with regards to construction. Doesn't talk about nursing organizations or medical organizations or any other organization. where the state might go into contract with folks that do other things that aren't construction. And so given that the bill only really is very narrowly focused towards this, just labor organizations, I find that it also doesn't seem to do anything at all because we don't have these sorts of agreements in many cases. I'm not sure why we need the bill, and frankly, I think it's kind of a little bit of a push against those specific labor organizations and not other ones like nursing associations. That I think it is a little unsatisfactory, unpalatable to me. So I'll vote no.
All right, any other discussion? Representative Hornock. 30 seconds or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Representative Ian actually has a valid point. I wouldn't mind looking at other organizations that we can actually do the same thing with, frankly. This bill does not stop anybody from bidding on any project. And I think that's important. So anybody can bid a project. I probably only win 10 to 15% of what I bid. So it's part of the game that we play in the construction industry. And then I do want to say that as far as out-of-state labor is concerned, that does happen all the time because we have these gigantic projects that we just cannot fulfill with the labor that is here in our area. And I followed a job here to Wyoming. That's what construction brought me to Wyoming, and it's what's been able to keep me here. I've been unemployed many, many times, and you just work through that because that's part of the up and down. And so we have these gigantic projects. We don't have a labor force that can actually can handle those sizes of projects, but we do need the ability to bid squarely. And I think this bill does that for us, and it allows that, which in turn will actually take our construction costs down a little bit on especially those large projects. Thanks.
All right, you're welcome. With that question being called, Marilyn, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 147.
Representative Chadwick,
Aye.
Representative Clauston,
Aye.
Representative Hornock,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Penn,
Aye.
Representative Trujillo,
No.
Representative Ward,
Aye.
Representative Yin. Chairman Zwanitzer.
No. With that 6-3, I am just guessing, Representative Heiner, you're carrying this bill on the floor? Okay. Thank you all for being here today. It does sound like we might get another bill sent to our committee for Friday, this morning. So plan on being here at 8 a.m. Friday, the 24th.